This class, this subject matter is one of my favorite to teach. And so just very, very quickly, by way of autobiography, let you know why this is so dear and near to me. I became a Christian when I was about 6 or 7 years old, and I grew up and took my faith seriously as I could, and was active in church and prayed and worshiped the whole shebang. When I went to my undergraduate degree, first I was a music major, then I was a double major in music and religion, and I eventually switched over just to religion. So I have almost a double major in music and religion. And when I got to religion more full-time, you might say, around my junior year, about a year or so, I had a serious, what Augustine called dark night of the soul. You might say I intellectually left the faith. I had serious questions, and I had this profound, incessant desire to make sure I wasn't being duped, I wasn't being tricked, and for a thinker type, not feeling stupid. That's real important for thinker types, not to be perceived as dumb. And so at the time, that was a governing value. Like, man, it's me a big deal if I say I don't believe this, because I've grown up my entire life. My mom was Christian, dad's a Christian. At the time, I dated a girl named Elaine. She was a Christian. And it's going to be a big deal if I leave the faith, but I've got to, I want to know what's true, and I don't want to believe things that are true. And so I started my quest for trying to figure out whether Christianity made sense, or if it's just something my parents told me, my preacher told me, and all that kind of stuff. And is it like Santa Claus? Santa will make you good and make you happy. And it's false nonsense. Sorry, kids. It's false. Is Christianity the same thing? I don't want to believe in it. I don't care if it made me good or happy. I don't care. I'd rather deal with nihilism, that is nothing, whatever. But let's deal with reality. And so that happened for a while, and to spare the time, I drilled all my questions to the ground. I fell in love with C.S. Lewis. I had professors, one in particular, I followed around like a little duckling. What about? And I'd print out questions of things and go to his office and start right at the top. Number one, why do you think about it? What about this? And what about? And I just drilled it. I also looked at other world religions and philosophies and tried to figure out, I thought that they made sense. I didn't study for years, but I looked at the major tenets of different religions. And so that's what I did. I came out of that dark hole, which I didn't know if I was going to. It wasn't just intellectual; it was emotional and spiritual too. But when I came out, it was great for a while. See, then I started my master's in divinity, and I was about a year into it, and it hit me again. This time for sure, instead of about a year and a half, it lasted a longer year. By that time, I was married, and it scared a girl named Elaine a lot. But I kept thinking, I've got to drill these questions to the ground. And when you go through religion studies a lot, this is very common. A lot of things you didn't know come to the fore, and a lot of questions are surfaced about all kinds of things, and which I'll talk about for the next several weeks. And so these issues is very common for people to go through the struggle. I came on the other side of that, and there was one minor time I had it when I was writing one of my books called A Skeptic Challenge as a Christian, but that was the major of those two major times. So I said that to say, out of the two major times, what surfaced for me, several things, good things that God worked through it, and one was a profound empathy for people who want Christianity to make sense. That was a big deal. I want Christianity to make sense. So packed for me, simple answers like just pray about it, just have faith, made me angry. Thought those were stupid answers. Maybe I almost had a fight with you. That's what I thought they were. So I have a great sympathy for people who think like that. I have a profound sympathy for people who are skeptical, because I'm a very skeptical person. If someone says, the water dam just broke, we don't have a dam, do we? Why? I'm just skeptical in nature, so my empathy with them went real high. Third, I learned a whole lot about what it's like to go through that dark night of the soul. It's a very scary process to go through. And so I've talked to people through the years who are abandoning their faith or have done it. I immediately come from a place of sympathy, like, man, I understand how dark that period is. It must have been very difficult for you, and so forth. Instead of wanting a judgment of like, you must not have had enough faith. I immediately come at it like, it's a dark time. Praise God, I came out of it. I understand. I think your conclusion's dead wrong. I believe it was true, but I understand the emotional toll that takes. So out of that came issues. And then later on, several years later, post-PhD, whatever, I was teaching at a high school for 2 years, and I was teaching in different classes, New Testament, apologetics, ethics, world religions, and stuff. I was the lead junior teacher, and that was the apologetics and ethics part. And first semester, I had a couple books I put together, made my curriculum from past teachers of different things. But I was frustrated about it because I thought none of these say it the way I want to say it and argue the same way I want to argue. I thought, I'll just write a book. And I thought, there's tons of books out there. And one day a student came in and he liked the reading I assigned this one book. And I said, why'd you like it? And he said, well, it was conversational. It was a dialogue between a pretend dialogue. I thought, and I mean, like that. I still remember, like he walked in, it was on Thursday morning, I think. And Brian Shield, he's a Major League Baseball player. Anyway, so he came in and said that, and I thought, that's it. I'll write the book in that format. And that set me on a journey to write my own book, and that was The Skeptic Challenge as a Christian. And I worked on that for several months and brought to the fore all the stuff, well, I believe. Okay, so this study comes out of years and years and years of my own study, both biblical studies, historical work, apologetics. Apologetic means how to defend the faith. Apologia in Greek means a formal defense. So if you went to court and you gave, Your Honor, I didn't do it, and you start giving your case, they call that an apologia. So today we say apologize. It's like a lot of times it means give an excuse for something. You're saying, I'm sorry. That's not what apologia and apologetics mean. So I don't have a degree in apologetics. Apologetics, there is a degree you can get in that and so forth, but that's not my specialty. My specialty was biblical studies and theology. And so I come at this whole question of is Christianity true, frankly, very, very, very well informed from the primary material. I had to learn 7 languages to get my degrees. I worked really hard for them. So you mix skepticism and appreciation for skepticism mixed with 3 advanced degrees to try to answer my own questions. So I'm trying to get a summary of all that in 1 hour. I'm kidding. No, in the next few weeks, that's my goal. That's where I'm coming from. So having said that, that's what we're starting. And that's also why I get excited about it. And a lot of times I'll put, because I've used this before, my name, but DavidPendergrass.com has resources. I've got a podcast called A Glimpse of the Kingdom and a blog. It's on my website. I've got, I think, over 300 different podcasts. A lot of them are dedicated to these kinds of things. If God is good, why is there evil? Why do babies die? I mean, a whole host of things, biblical questions. People from around the world will write in and say, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And so if that's a resource for you, I recommend you have it. So that's where that comes from. We are going to cover a good bit of ground. In the intro tonight, I'll go pretty fast. I'll slow down when we get to data. This is more intro, but that's what I want to do. That's right here. Okay, have a handout? Stalled long enough? Good. Okay, why are you a Christian? It's worth asking the question if you are one. If you're not, and you're talking to a person who's a skeptic, I always encourage you to ask the question, what do you practice a particular religion? That's the way I used to say it. Do you practice a particular religion? And if they say, yeah, no, whatever their answer is, I go, why is that? Which one is it? Which one is it? Something, why, oh, you're a Christian? Why? And if the answer is anything like, because I'm American, because of my parents, because I was raised in church, because I was forced to believe it, because it feels good, because it makes me happy, because it helped me with my depression, all those reasons are bad reasons to be a Christian. None of those things hold up. And I know that for a fact because I'm the one who counseled people through the years who have abandoned their faith in Jesus. Those things do not hold up. There are millions of previous Christians for those reasons. My hope for you is that at least one time in your conversation with a person, if you're a Christian, at least at some point in the conversation, you will say these words. I'm a Christian because I'm convinced Christianity is true. I like to believe true things. That's it. And I will talk a lot more about truth in a little bit. But in 1 Peter 3:15, you know 1 Peter 3:15? Always honor Christ in your heart, but always be what? Prepared to give an answer. 1 Peter 3:15, you need to write that down if you don't. You always need to be prepared to give a reason for, he says, for the hope that is in you. That's the charge, 1 Peter. Always be prepared, 1 Peter 3:15. Be prepared to give a reason for the hope that is in you. Now, if I'm not tonight, this is not tonight a how to share your faith study. But if this helps you, I hope it does help you as you talk about sharing your faith, embolden you. I've asked people through the years, why don't you ever talk about Jesus? Not really. Why not? Well, I'm just scared if they ask me a bunch of questions. That's usually the number one thing is, I won't know enough. Well, you'll never know enough. You're not God. You're not omniscient. But what you try to do as a Christian, my encouragement always is, see if you can, you need to practice this. You're not on the elevator speech, right? At some point, practice and say, why am I a Christian? Can I write it down? Talk conversation? Come to the place where you can say it in about 60 seconds. Here are my reasons. Here's my 2 reasons. Here are my 3 reasons. Something like that. I can. I've got my 3 reasons, and I memorize them, and they're short and sweet for me. I know exactly what they are. And if someone asks me to explain more or push me on them, I can unpack every one of them. Now, granted, this is my entire career. I've been doing this for almost 30 years. But I, like every other person, had to practice it. I go, what is the reason? And it started really when I started those skeptical things and trying to write a book. I thought, well, what do I really believe? I mean, really, like, really in a court of law. What are the three reasons? And so I get it down to about 30 seconds, even 15, 20 seconds. But I can open this up to a long conversation and try to figure out what those are. But it's worth asking the question. Now, there's a great need to do these kinds of studies of why Christianity might be true. For example, youth, it says I've seen 3 different studies that say 7 out of 10 after high school, 7 out of 10 leave church. And of the 7 out of the 10 that leave, around 3 of them never come back, 3 to 4. That's roughly 30-40% of so-called Christian youth who never step foot in a church again. Now, the number one reason is because they've done all the study of years of it. The reason why is because the top 2 reasons are, 2 or 3 reasons, is the university professors, they go to college, university, whatever, and they feel like they're forced to choose between science and religion as a false dichotomy, and that's nonsense. And we'll talk about that later on, tonight or next week. That's false, but no one tells them that's false, and no one prepared them to deal with that in life. All they heard from the pulpit and from Bible studies on, damn evolution, then Satan and this, and science this, and don't listen, they're going to corrupt your faith. Christianity is not the enemy of science. It's just not. And I'll defend that it's not. So they leave the faith. They go, well, this professor sure is smart. Everyone else around my peer group believes it, and I got to believe it. The other reason they think that pluralism, they know a Buddhist friend, an atheist friend, a Wiccan, and a pagan, and they call themselves pagans, by the way. It's a particular religion. And they say, I can't tell them they're going to hell. And so that's pluralism problem, or exclusivism, that Jesus is the only way. So there's a lot of reasons, but those are the top 2 reasons why. Science, religion, and other faiths. But they leave. They're not prepared for it. Whenever I go to a church, like I said to Bennett, and on my previous church, I tell the youth pastors, please, at minimum, and several things I want you to accomplish, but I need you to prepare these youth for the real world, for reality, when the parents are dragging them here. Because in the real world, they won't care. They will try their best to drag you down. They're going to have good reasons. They're going to have a lot of professors who have thought about this for a long time, but not well, because they're not people who are educated like I am in the field. They're philosophers, world religion professors. They don't know anything. But they're going to sound very persuasive. And we got to get it ready for it. Okay, well, that's the reason. Another reason that we got to get ready for having reasons for the faith, not only just normal, was that the second largest group of religion now in the U.S. is the nuns, the nun category. What religion are you, nun? And it's growing. It's growing. That's the second largest religious group in North America, and most of Europe is a nun. That's almost a quarter. In the last decade, U.S. nuns have not N-U-N-S. That's kind of funny. The nuns are marching. The nuns have overtaken Catholics, mainline Protestants, and all followers of non-Christian faiths. It's becoming one of the largest denominations, you might say, in the country. Everyone up down the street, I worked at a city before here, over 70% of the people identified as nun. I told the church, this has got to be one of those largest pagan populations per capita in the country. This is prime area. A large amount of literature, overwhelming amount of atheist materials all over the place. That's all over YouTube, hundreds of millions of hits of atheist blogs, podcasts. They are, we would say, evangelistic in a bad sense of the term. They are very, very, very outspoken about their non-faith. They're not just, I don't believe, they are anti-theists. There's a large website called The Clergy Project. And this is full, I think it's over several thousand now. These are ex-clergy who abandon the faith. It's a community to support them and celebrate them. A lot of them then go on speaking tours and write books opposing Christianity. So a lot of times on podcasts, I respond to some of them. This is all over. Now, you might not be in that world, granted, and I'll talk about that in a second. That's fine. That is fine. But it is in the world right now. It's overwhelming the world. YouTube, Facebook, groups. It's all over. And they are almost always ridiculously horrible. Some guys made me join groups and Facebook groups a long time ago. The stuff they say, they're very, very ignorant about Christianity, but boy, are they persuasive a lot of people. It takes 5 contradictions of the Bible, 3 comments, evolution, a crystal and a pear tree, and they're over. Never mind, I didn't realize Christianity is so stupid. They leave 18 years of the faith is gone. 23 is gone. All because they saw a post and they saw some video and they read a book by Richard Dawkins. It's over. I go on for a long time. If you don't know this, there's a great need to have reasons for Christianity. And you might have your own. You might have just doubts and so forth. I don't know. Now, before I get my reasons, just very quickly, I want to say I felt compelled to say these things before we start. This presentation it's just not going to appeal to everyone's situation in need. So that's one of the hard part of this is I want everybody to be happy. Everybody goes, this just nailed 100% of the minutes for exactly what I needed to hear. I can't do that. I'm sorry, but I can't. If you're very well read in this field, you might be frustrated because he should have said more there. You're right. I have in print or I've done in blogs or podcasts, but I won't do it thorough. Some of you on the other hand will go, he went so thorough I never thought about my life. My brain hurts and I'm exhausted. So the pendulum I know is in this room and online. The whole pendulum, you're going to be, this is exhausting. But can I say this real quick because I've been in the game for a long time? May I encourage you try not to feel overwhelmed? I want to encourage you. Not everyone needs this information, but if you get 10% of it, if you understand more of the rational foundation of Christianity, I'll consider it successful. So please, you won't leave. I don't think any of you have perfect memory. I mean, you might have, but you probably won't leave this study memorizing everything that was said. I mean, I'll speak a lot of words, okay? So please don't be discouraged if it's too much. But secondly, and my wife can testify, please don't be discouraged if a lot of this material is brand new for you. That was something for a long time in our marriage. I was going through school and I'd come home. I didn't talk a lot about it, but we did some because I knew Elaine was at a different space in her faith than I was. Because I processed so much of the darkness. And so she felt, maybe sometimes still, but she felt a long time very badly. I've never heard any of this stuff, and I feel dumb, and I feel this. Why did I hear any of this stuff? I mean, true, great, yeah. So if that's you, and I found many people through the years say that, please don't. Please don't say negative junk about yourself, like, I'm so dumb. I've been a Christian for 40 years, and I've had guys and gals who come there in the mid-'80s and never heard any of this stuff. And that's unfortunate, but glad you're here. Glad you're watching online. There you go. I can't make you believe anything at all. Aren't you glad? I can't make you believe it. All right? Now, the word prove means demonstrate the truth or existence of something by evidence or argument. Demonstrate the truth or existence by evidence or argument. I can attempt to prove that Christianity is true, but no matter what we do, we can't make a person believe something. I mean, that's it. I can't make you come to the declaration. You did it. You proved it to me. I mean, that's a psychological or mental state, and I can't put that in you. That depends on whether or not you're willing to be convinced, what type of evidence you're looking for, and if I provided it, whether you had enough evidence. What I can tell you, and what I'm choosing to tell you, is what I find convincing that proved it to me. And that's why I named the study Christianity, Why I Know It's True, not why you should know it's true. Right? That was on purpose. Here's why I know it's true. The good news is, and I've got this question a lot through the years, is, well, David, what do I do? How do all this information? I always go back, throw the ball back and say, when I have skeptics, atheists, Christians, this or that, I say, you're the judge and jury. You get to decide. So listen to their arguments. Is that persuasive or not? And it's exactly true now with Christianity and every time. You get to decide that. I can't make you believe it, but you're always the judge and jury. Decide for yourself. So I'm going to try my best to present my case, and I'll try my best, but briefly, and I'm sorry about that, but briefly, the opposing view, and I'll talk more about that later. But I can know something without being certain. This is one of those number one things skeptics say online. Well, you just think you Christians are so certain about everything. No. That's not what knowledge is. It's very common to say that. Well, they're certain, even though there's no evidence. We'll talk about that later on. But think about American English for a second. I can say, I think something is true. Maybe we're about 51% sure. What percentage would you go? I think it's at 12. I think she had red hair. And usually we say we know something. Maybe we're like, what, 75% plus? I don't know. I mean, how would you put a number on it? We say we're certain when we're 100% sure. But technically speaking, I mean, philosophically speaking, you can't be certain of anything. I mean, that's just true. I might not exist. This might be a figment of my imagination. I might be a brain in Nevada on an alien ship. I might be in the Matrix. I might be dreaming. I mean, okay, right. I mean, just be real here. I'm sorry, Pat, like that just sounds crazy. But pause for a second. Philosophically, I'm not certain. 100%. It's logically possible. But I know I exist. I know I'm married. I know I'm talking right. I know you exist. I know it. Am I 100% sure? Yeah. Am I certain Christianity is true? No, I'm not certain. But I know it. That's enough for me. What percentage would I give? I don't know. At least in the 80s, 90, 95. That's good enough for me. I'm not certain I'm married, but I say I know it. I'd say I'm 95, 98%. Right? She could be a figment of my imagination. People could be in and out and try to dupe me. I could have false pictures in a Photoshop. And there's all kinds of things you could throw out there. But I know it, and that's fine. That's enough. I sleep at night just fine knowing I'm married, like I know I'm a Christian. So knowing doesn't mean be certain about. It just means I'm very, very, very probable, and that's fine. So I know Christianity is true. I'm not certain it's true, but I know it. Sure. Okay. Yeah. And nothing I'm going to say in any time will be a knockdown argument so that an atheist or skeptic goes, oh, never mind, I was going to speak, but now I can't. They're going to say something. I've seen too many debates. I've talked to too many people, too many skeptics. They'll say something in response. Great. So be it. So be it. Christians ought to have a response too. Great. That's dialogue. That's great. What matters is whether what the skeptic says compels you to believe. That's what matters. So if the goal is to, well, think of it this way. Like in a courtroom, there are going to be two sides, right? You have two prosecuting defense. They're both making a case, and the judge and jury goes, you did it. You convinced me of all the evidence. You might even present some of the exact same evidence, but fit into a different narrative, which I'll call worldview later. Okay, but the jurors go, you fit that better in that whole scheme of that convinced me more. You're the jury. You're the judge. That's it. So that's good. So nothing's going to be knocked down. There's going to be nothing in courtroom when they go, Your Honor, here's the evidence. And they go, we give up. I mean, it's not going to happen that way. They're going to have some kind of, that's like in real life. So if I were being completely fair, I would have an atheist right here beside me, some professor atheist who studied like I had and had a response and get a rejoinder and everything. And that'd be cool, and this would last 3 years. I mean, it'd be great. That's what happens. In all fairness, I know that. And so what I've done is, in your handouts, not every time, but in your handouts, I have, for the opposing view, read. And if you want more opposing view, come to me, I'll give it to you. Seriously. If that too much scares you right now, fine, don't read it. But if it doesn't scare you, later on you're going to read the opposing view, read them. Good. You're the jury. You get to go, yeah, that did convince me. I'm abandoning Jesus on the spot. Well, here you go. Before you do that, will you talk to me? Before you abandon him? Of course, another thing is, I'm not omniscient. I don't know everything there is to know about apologetics, so I'll do my best, but there you go. Any questions at all about anything I've said so far? Any comments? Anything before we get started? Yeah. No? Okay. Any questions online? Elaine, are you watching comments at all? Okay. Will you give me a heads up? It's like 7:15, 7:20. Thank you, fire truck. We need to pray for them. The way this works is, feel free to jump in there, ask questions, comments, clarity. If I need to restate it a certain way, if it didn't really click with you yet, let me know, okay? Does that make really for real? Okay, good. All right, let's talk about some terms first. Yay for terms. Aren't you excited about terms? Okay, atheism. Oh, on your handout, you'll see that in your handout. Obviously, did I say this already? I gave you chunks of space. It might look kind of random. It is, because if it's not much space, it's because I'm not going to talk a whole lot. If it's a lot, I'm going to talk more. That's just to help you. Don't use it. Bring your own paper. Whatever. Okay, atheism. I have a lot here, but atheism. Okay, the term atheism comes from a Greek word. If I have dry erase your board, which I'll get sometime, I'll write it up for you. Atheism in Greek is two Greek words. The A is called the alpha primitive. It negates what comes after it. Theos means God or deity, right? The deity from the Latin deus, that's deity. Deity, theos mean the same thing. Theism, and so forth. So atheism literally means no God. No God. Forever. In every dictionary, every philosophical handbook, forever, atheism is the answer to the question, is there a God? No. So atheism is actually a propositional statement. It's a proposition. No God exists. No God exists. If you say, yes, God exists, you're probably a theist. Theism, we'll talk about that in a second. That's down there. Saying thea, now you read Greek, so proud of you. There you go. That's what that is. But what's happened lately is, instead of making it a proposition, which it is, no God exists, like Santa Claus does not exist, What's happened is, back to Bertrand Russell by 1972, Antony Flew, sorry, who was a well-known atheist. He was for a while, and then he changed sides, became a theist before. Anyway, they changed it from a propositional statement, no God exists, to I don't believe God exists. So it went from a propositional statement of what's true or false, either does or doesn't, to a psychological statement. Today, if you talk to atheists, they will, I almost guarantee you, they will ignore the original definition. They will only stick with the new definition, which is no longer atheism. Really what they tell me now, that's my psychological state. My response to them is, you can go and debate that on, they do it forever, and I've had conversations, oh my goodness, you can, no, you're the one, because what the trick is, it's the way to avoid the burden of proof of evidence. Christians say God exists. You make a propositional statement, you need to defend it. You're right, that's right. That's exactly right, Christians do. If we say God exists, you better be able to defend it. That's a propositional statement. God exists. Elaine exists. Where's your evidence? If I said, I don't believe Elaine exists, I don't need to defend anything. You have to convince me. If I say Elaine doesn't exist, that's a proposition. Does not exist. What's your evidence for that? Usually the response is, you can't prove a negative. That's demonstrably false. That's demonstrable. I can prove right now an elephant is not in this room. Do you see one? But not a magical, invisible one, but a literal, normal elephant. Nope, it's not here. I just proved it. An elephant does not exist in this room. I just proved a negative. We can all see it. We all see the one not here, no smell, no sound. There is no horse. I know that because there's a horse specialist in the room who can smell the horse from a mile away. I can. We can always. Santa Claus doesn't exist. I can prove it. Go to North Pole. Everyone knows in America lives in North Pole. No, we know that. From satellite imaging, he's invisible, magical, blah, blah. Okay, well now you're changing the narrative. You're changing that. But if it's a normal definition, but forget Santa if that gets you confused. Back to my elephant analogy. I can prove negative all day long. But if I say I don't believe God exists, I don't have to defend anything. If I say he doesn't exist, I got to prove that. And that's the goal, is to avoid burden of proof. So what I tell people is I don't join the debate with that. If I'm talking to a person and say I'm an atheist, I will say this to my nosebleeds. You'll get hopefully tired of hearing it. If we're talking to a person and say, do you practice a religion? They go, no, I'm an atheist. I go, oh, great. What do you mean by that? What does atheist mean to you? Now if they go, the only one thing it means, right away I know, I'm listening carefully, because I know it's going to, I don't believe in God. I don't think there's enough evidence for God. Now I know right away when they say there's not enough evidence for God, I know right away they don't know what they're talking about. They're not very educated in this whole, they're not. They don't know Greek. They don't know, but I don't care. And the time, it's not my job to make sure I start, did you know actually the Greek? I go, oh, so you don't believe God. I just dropped the term. So you don't believe God exists. Yeah, I don't believe God exists. Why is that? I see, well, I just don't believe. Not enough evidence. Why do you think there's not enough evidence? Have you ever heard there's any evidence for God at all? You've never heard anybody ever give any evidence, ever? And they go, well, no. Oh, how about that? Why? What about you? Oh, yeah, I'm a Christian theist, and we'll talk about that later. Then I give reasons for it. And I have my reasons, right? That I can do in 20 seconds. Okay. That's what atheism means. It is literally, no God exists. Okay. I like how Matt McCormick, he's at California State University, he says, briefly stated, the main arguments are God's non-existence is analogous to the non-existence of Santa Claus. The existence of widespread human and non-human suffering is incompatible with all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good being. Discoveries about the origins and nature of the universe and about the evolution of life on Earth make the God hypothesis an unlikely explanation. Widespread non-belief and the lack of compelling evidence show that a God who seeks belief in humans does not exist. Broad considerations from science that support naturalism, or the view that all and only physical entities cause exist, have also led many to atheism conclusion. Now, that's a lot there, but you hear these are the main reasons used for not believing in God. We'll talk about all of those in the study. Almost all. We're going to talk about evolution, but almost all of them. So they'll say there are reasons to lead me to not believe. They still haven't gotten to what atheism is. And so I would ask the question, what would you, if you're having that nerdy conversation, what would you use as the term for the person who says, no God exists? What would be the word for that? There is no word. Because they've changed, now there's no word. Atheism? I don't know. So anyway, so if you meet a person who's an atheist today, the bottom line is they probably have changed the definition of what it originally meant forever. Forever. And now at a popular YouTube level, it means I don't believe God exists. And they're going to say, because no one's giving me good evidence. That's usually what it means. And you go, okay. But that's usually, you do what you want, though. But I'll use that term sometimes throughout the study. Agnosticism, there's your alpha primitive, now you're Greek specialist. Gnosticism from gnosis, so knowledge or understanding, means without knowledge. So agnostic or agnosticism is coined in the 19th century by English biologist T.H. Huxley. He invented the word to denote people who, like himself, confess themselves to be hopelessly ignorant concerning a variety of matters about which metaphysics and theologians, both orthodox and heterodox, dogmatize with the great utmost confidence. So the basic way of saying, I don't know. Sometimes you'll hear people agnostics who are strong agnostics and weak. The strong says, no one can know whether God exists. It's unknowable. The weak form says, I don't know. In many people's opinion, and I'm one of them, if you're gut level, real honest, you could never be an atheist. You could never hold the proposition God does not exist. Because you'd have to be omniscient to know that God does not exist. What if a God is, you have to be omniscient. You can say, I don't believe God exists, but you're not an atheist, you have this quasi, whatever. I'd be an agnostic. If I were not a Christian, well, I still would be agnostic. I would be a deist. If I were a Christian. But but gut level honest, you have to say that. Most is, I don't know, I'm not sure. Now, what you'll find is, in most conversations today, is it's really popular to be agnostic because there's an air of superiority about yourself. They'll come out and say, I don't know, I'm open-minded. See, you atheists are closed-minded. You Christians are certainly closed-minded, or religious people. I'm open. I'm just willing to see where the evidence goes. And all you little closed-minded idiot bigots, that's exactly how it's portrayed. I've seen hundreds and hundreds of hours of debates and lectures. So you'll find agnostics not all that way, but that's very often how it's characterized as.
On the atheist blogs and podcasts and things like that, last time I was listening, you'll talk about how they're just very determined, dogmatic, and mean. They sound really mean a lot of them. Are agnostics involved in that same sort of thing? Do they have that same vibe as they are?
That's a great question. Most atheists in print or YouTube, now I haven't talked to most atheists like on the street. Well, when I meet people on the street, you might say normal conversations, they're not very militant. By the time they make it to YouTube and whatever, they are. And a lot of them aren't even atheistic. They're, like I said, anti-theist. They're Latin and from the Greek means against or instead of. They're against God. Christopher Hitchens was an anti-theist. He hated the idea of God. That's right. So a lot of atheists compelled Christians or others that it must be true because they're so firm and dogmatic and certain, and there's no evidence at all, and you're stupid if you believe it, and evolutionists, they're that way all the time. Agnostics tend not to do that. They tend to be like, I saw a debate, it was hosted in Mexico City, and they had 3 or 4 well-known atheists. Richard Dawkins was on there, and 3 or 4 Christians. William Lane Craig was on that side. There's been a pretend Mac boxing ring. You can see it on YouTube. At the very end, Michio Kaku is a Japanese-American scientist. Great. Seemed like a really nice guy, brilliant. He comes down and says, I'm none of this massive crowd. I'm neither side. The atheists are certain God doesn't exist, and those the religious people, because there's some Jews too, they're certain that I'm not sure. I'm open-minded. They go, yay! So that's typical of agnostics, of the happy middle. They're not very militant.
What did you say this new kind of fake atheism that you spoke of? Would it, that, if we were going to categorize that somewhere, would it fit closer to agnostic?
I think so.
Because a lot of their responses are, it just hasn't been proven to them yet. They're just not.
Yes.
They don't have their response is they're just ignorant of the topic, right? They have no.
So just repeat in case the camera didn't hear you. Isn't the new kind of, in fact, it's called New Atheism. It's what's called, the name is actually called New Atheism. Coined about after 9/11. When 9/11 happened, some atheists got very militant. Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris wrote tons of books, became big sellers, went around the world touring, trillion hits on YouTube, whatever. People call them the new atheists because they moved that category. And you said, question, isn't life agnosticism? Yes, except they're going to add the words believe. I don't believe God exists. Agnostics, if they're being purists, they'll say, I'm not going to say that. They're going to say, I believe I don't know. But the new atheists are going to say, I believe he does not exist. And you got to prove it to me right now if you think so. I'm serious. You need to convince me of it. My chapter 1 is, are you really open-minded? That's in my book. Are you really open-minded? So good. Yeah, it's like that, but they don't use vocabulary. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in God. But you do, so you have to prove it. It's back to burden of proof. And again, repeat myself, because this is very important. The burden of proof is on the person who makes the propositional claim. Yes, I have made the proposition. If I say I'm a Christian, I know God exists. I would have if I went to a courtroom, they would say, what's your evidence? But it works both ways. If someone says God does not exist, what's your evidence? What's your evidence? If there's no horse in the room, what? Miracle on 34th Street, just like Miracle on 34th Street. Deism and theism, these are close. Theism and deism are, now we're switching gears a little bit because these are worldviews. Worldviews are a fundamental cognitive orientation of an individual toward reality. I know that's a good mouthful. A fundamental cognitive orientation toward reality. When you see the world and all your beliefs and values, that forms your worldview. It forms a worldview. What you believe about reality is a worldview. Theism, deism are worldviews. Theism, because now this is where it's a little tricky, nerd talk. Theos in Greek, that means godism is all that means in Greek. Deism is the Latin form. That also means godism, because that's Latin. Deism and so. But there's a distinction in philosophy when we make these terms. Theism is the proposition that an all-powerful creator God exists. Now notice how this rules out almost every single non-Western religion. Just theism doesn't work in Hinduism, doesn't work in Buddhism, that's atheistic. Doesn't work in Confucianism, doesn't work in Shinto, on and on. So it's an all-powerful creator God exists. But there would be no trace of God's being in creation. He exists in the world. So that's it. So he exists and he rules over the universe. Now, I am a Christian theist. That's the kind of flavor I am. You can be a Jewish theist, a Muslim theist. That's about it. Some might say Zoroastrian theist, but that's maybe. But Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. Creator God exists. That's right. That's the proposition. Yeah. So I believe in all-powerful creator God exists. You're a theist. That's important because that God is separate from creation. I'm going for a long time, but I won't because of study. I want to go on, but this isn't world religion. Though I can teach you if you want world religion. So I taught that at college. So it's not pantheism, panentheism, and so forth. Now, there would be no trace of God's being in creation. Theism, there's no trace of God's being, his essence, in creation. No more than an architect is in a building that she designed. Let that sink in. Because someone comes and says, where's God right now? Where's his hair? Where's his fingerprint? As a Christian theist, my immediate comment is, I don't have evidence like that. As a Christian theist, if you don't know, theism is a belief in an all-powerful creator God who is not part of creation, not part of the universe. He's not an element in the universe. He's not a quark, a lepton, those are nuclear parts. He's not an atom. He's not a piece of wood. He's not a star, a planet. He's not there. No more than Shakespeare is in his plays. There's no character called Shakespeare. Even if he wrote himself in it, that's not the actual Shakespeare. Now, the closest analogy we get to that, the closest analogy to Christian theism to what's happened in the real world is Dante. You remember Dante in your old long time ago? You read Dante's Inferno? It's Dante's Inferno that his layers of 7 layers of hell. It gets colder and colder that it goes down. The bear down the bottom is Brutus and Cassius, the ones who betrayed Caesar, and of course Judas. It's solid rock cold, basically, because it's devoid of all the warmth of God's love. And so Dante's Inferno picture set the stage for medieval Catholicism and their picture of hell and heaven and on and on. But it's a good fiction, but it's just not true in the Bible. But anyway, Dante wrote himself as a character in the story. He was in the story. He took a tour. That's like Jesus. It's like Jesus. God, as it were, God the Son wrote himself into the story. So, is there a God? Yes. And it, or he, or she might reveal it or her himself to people. Then people add the adjective. So, I'm a theist. Yep. What kind of theist? Well, so there's an all-powerful creator God. Yep. Well, do you know that God at all? Some theists might say, no, but we come to find out, Jews, Christians, and Muslims, all three of us say, I do know which God exists. How do you know that? Because they would all say he has revealed himself to us in different ways. The Christians say through Jesus. And through the acts in the Old Testament, right? Every time he revealed himself at the bush and so forth. As a Christian theist, of course, I think Jesus is the best revelation of that. Deism is like that, except it's the view that an all-powerful creator God has not revealed himself. He's not revealed himself. So, is to say, is there a God? Yes. What kind of God is he, she, it? Well, it, he, she, whatever, is an all-powerful, but we don't know anything about that God because he, she, it has never revealed itself.
Like the same as deist, the
hands off. Sometimes they call it a clockmaker. They wound up the clock of the universe and step back. This little footnote, this is going to rock your world. You're going to stop being Americans. This is the number one religion of the Founding Fathers, deism. People say, we're a Christian country. Well, first off, no, we're not. Our founders are Christians. No, they all weren't. Some of them were. Most of them were deists. That there is an all-powerful creator God. Okay, this idea of theism or that God, this is very important because if you talk to skeptics, or if you have this problem too, why is God not in creation? I'm trying to make this as abundantly clear, and I've heard this in so many debates done poorly. If someone says, well, where's God right now? Oh, I need evidence right now. I always say, and we'll talk about this later, what kind of evidence do you need? Because if you mean tactile, physical properties of Yahweh, I do not have it, and I will never have it. I will never be able to manifest physical properties of Yahweh. Or Jesus, because he's long gone and raised from the dead, or the Spirit. I don't believe in that kind of God. I've said that to people. I don't believe in that kind of God. Let's be real clear up front, I don't have that. It's much more akin to if Shakespeare had written himself into one of his own plays. And I go to C.S. Lewis. Of course I go to C.S. Lewis. Does everybody go to C.S. Lewis? This is C.S. Lewis wrote a book called Mere Christianity.
Finding Shakespeare by C.S. Lewis. The Russians, I am told, report that they have not found God in outer space. On the other hand, a good many people in many different times and countries claim to have found God or been found by God here on earth. The conclusion some want us to draw from these data is that God does not exist. As a corollary, those who think they have met him on earth were suffering from a delusion. But other conclusions might be drawn. For one, we have not yet gone far enough in space. There have been ships on the Atlantic for a good time before America was discovered. Two, God does exist, but is locally confined to this planet. Three, the Russians did find God in space without knowing, because they lacked the requisite apparatus for detecting him. Four, God does exist, but is not an object either located in a particular part of space, nor diffused, as we once thought ether was, throughout space. The first two conclusions do not interest me. The sort of religion for which they could be a defense would be a religion for savages. The belief in a local deity who can be contained in a particular temple, island, or grove. That, in fact, seems to be the sort of religion about which the Russians, or some Russians, and a good many people in the West, are being irritated. It is not in the least disquieting that no astronauts have discovered a God of that sort. The really disquieting thing would be if they had. The third and fourth conclusions are the ones for my mind. Looking for God, or heaven, by exploring space, is like reading or seeing all Shakespeare's plays in the hope that you will find Shakespeare as one of the characters, or Stratford as one of the plays. Shakespeare is in one sense present at every moment in every play. but he is never present in the same way as Falstaff or Lady Macbeth, nor is he diffused through the play like a guest. If there were an idiot who thought plays existed on their own without an author, our belief in Shakespeare would not be much affected by his saying, quite truly, that he had studied all the plays and never found Shakespeare in them. The rest of us, in varying degrees, according to our perceptiveness, found Shakespeare in the play. But it is a quite different sort of finding from anything our poor friend has in mind. Even he has, in reality, been in some way affected by Shakespeare, but without knowing. He lacked the necessary apparatus for detecting Shakespeare. And now, of course, this is only an analogy. I am not suggesting at all that the existence of God is as easily established as the existence of Shakespeare. And my point is that if God does exist, he is related to the universe more as an author is related to a play than as one object in the universe is related to another. If God created the universe, he created space-time, which is to the universe as the meter to a poem, or the key to music. To look for him as one item within the framework which he himself invented is nonsensical. If God, such a God as any adult religion believes in, exists, mere movement in space will never bring you any nearer to him or any farther from him than you are at this very moment. You can neither reach him nor avoid him when traveling to Alpha Centauri or even to other galaxies. A fish is no more and no less in the sea after it has swum 1,000 miles than it was when it set out. How then, it may be asked, can we either reach or avoid? The avoiding, in many times and places, has proved so difficult that a very large part of the human race failed to achieve it. But in our own time and place, it is extremely easy. Avoid silence, avoid solitude, avoid any train of thought that leads off the beaten track. Concentrate on money, sex, status, health, and, above all, on your own freedom. Keep the radio, live in a crowd, use plenty of sedation. If you must read books, select them very carefully. But you'd be safer to stick to the paper. About the reaching, I am a far less reliable guide. That is because I never had the experience of looking for God. It was the other way round. He was the hunter, or so it seemed to me, and I was the deer. He stalked me like a redskin, took unerring aim, and fired. And I am very thankful that that is how the first conscious meeting occurred. It forearms one against subsequent fears that the whole thing was only wishful. Something one didn't wish for can hardly be that. But it is significant that this long-evaded encounter happened at a time when I was making a serious effort to obey my conscience. No doubt it was far less serious than I supposed, but it was the most serious I had made for a long time. One of the first results of such an effort is to bring your picture of yourself down to something nearer lifestyle. And presently, you begin to wonder whether you are yet, in any full sense, a person at all. Whether you are entitled to call yourself I. It is a sacred name. In that way, the process is like being psychoanalyzed, only cheaper. I mean in dollars. In some other ways, it may be more costly. You find that what you call yourself is only a thin film on the surface of an unsounded and dangerous sea. But not merely danger. Radiant things, delights and inspirations come to the surface, as well as snarling resentments and nagging love. One's ordinary self is then a mere persona. There's a huge area out of sight behind it. And then, if one listens to the physicists, one discovers that the same is true of all things around. These tables and chairs, this magazine, the trees, clouds and mountains of the sun. Poke, scientifically, into them, and you find the unimaginable structure of the atom. That is, in the long run, you find mathematical forms. There are you, whatever you means, sitting reading. Out there, whatever there means, is a black page with white marks on it. And both are facades. Behind both lies, well, whatever it is. The psychologists and the theologians, though they use different symbols, equally use symbols when they try to probe the depth behind the facade of you. That is, they can't really say, it is this. But they can say, it is in some way like this. And the physicists, trying to probe behind the other facade, can give you only mathematics. And the mathematics may be true about the reality, but it can hardly be the reality itself, any more than contour lines are real lines. I am not in the least blaming either set of experts for this state of affairs. They make progress. They are always discovering. The point, however, is that every fresh discovery, far from dissipating, deepens the mystery. Presently, if you are a person of a certain sort, if you are one who has to believe that all things which exist must have unity, it will seem to you irresistibly probable that what lies ultimately behind the one facade also lies ultimately behind the other. And then, again, if you are that sort of person, you may come to be convinced that your contact with that mystery in the area you call yourself is a good deal closer than your contact through what you call matter. For in the one case, I, the ordinary conscious I, am continuous with the unknown depth. And after that, you may come, some do, to believe that that voice, like all the rest I must speak symbolically, that voice which speaks in your conscience and in some of your intensive joys, which is sometimes so obstinately silent, sometimes so easily silenced, and then at other times so loud and emphatic, is in fact the closest contact you have with the mystery, and therefore finally to be trusted, obeyed, feared, and desired more than all other things. But still, if you are a different sort of person, you will not come to this conclusion. I hope everyone sees how this is related to the astronautical question from which we start. The process I have been sketching may equally well occur, or fail to occur, wherever you happen to be. Space travel really has nothing to do with the matter. To some, God is discoverable everywhere. To others, no. Those who do not find him on Earth are unlikely to find him in space. But send a saint up in a spaceship, and he'll find God in space as he found God on Earth. Much depends on the seed. And this is especially confirmed by my own religion, which is Christianity. When I said a while ago that it was nonsensical to look for God as one item within his own work, the universe, some readers may have wanted to protest. They wanted to say, but surely, according to Christianity, that is just what did once happen. Surely, the central doctrine is that God became man and walked about among other men in Palestine. If that is not appearing as an item in his own work, what is it? The objection is much to the point. To meet it, I must readjust my old analogy of the play. One might imagine a play in which the dramatist introduced himself as a character into his own play and was pelted off the stage as an impudent impostor by the other characters. It might be rather a good play. If I had any talent for the theatre, I'd try my hand at writing. But since, as far as I know, such a play doesn't exist, we had better change to a narrative, a story into which the author puts himself as one of the characters. We have a real instance of this in Dante's Divine Comedy. Dante is, one, the muse outside the poem who is inventing the whole thing, and two, a character inside the poem whom the other characters meet and with whom they hold conversation. Where the analogy breaks down is that everything the poem contains is merely imaginary, in that the characters have no free will. They, the characters, can say to Dante only what Dante, the poet, has decided to put into their mouth. I do not think we humans are related to God in that way. I think God can make things which not only, like a poet's or novelist's characters, seem to have a partially independent life, but really have. But the analogy furnishes a crude model of the incarnation in two respects. One, Dante the poet and Dante the character are in a sense one, but in another sense two. This is a faint and far-off suggestion of what theologians mean by the union of the two natures, divine and human, in Christ. Two, the other people in the poem meet and see and hear Dante, but they have not even the faintest suspicion that he is making the whole world in which they exist and has a life of his own, outside it, independent of it. It is the second point which is most relevant. For the Christian story is that Christ was perceived to be God by very few people indeed, perhaps for a time only by St. Peter, who would also, and for the same reason, have found God in space. For Christ said to Peter, "Flesh and blood have not taught you this." The methods of science do not discover facts of that order.
Any questions about that? Okay. So at key, though, Lewis's point, of course, is the point I was making, which why I showed the video, which is in theism and even deism both. It's the belief in all creator God is not in creation. It's not an object in creation. No more than Shakespeare or Dante is someone in the narrative, unless you write himself in. Saying by analogy, it's like that with Jesus. Jesus wrote himself into the play, of course, and became a real human being. And the point all in the middle part was to say that back when Khrushchev and the Russians, so he's not here. Goran really said that when he was in space, a cosmonaut said, I didn't find God. You're saying he didn't have the requisite apparatus. He's saying we do have the requisite apparatus. We have the right tools to find that God. It's not in space. It's in us. Whatever us is. Whether it's psychological, theologian, we have it in us. When we start reflecting on who we are, realize, like you said, it costs us a lot. I said the person's head on the pillow. It costs a whole lot because you realize we're full of all kinds of bad stuff. But that's when we start meeting the God who was there all along, like Shakespeare of all of his plays. Anyway, any questions or comments about that so far? One last word about religion, and we'll move on. Religion. Christianity is not religion, it's a relationship. Okay, that's cute. It's cute, it's just false. Christianity is a religion. It is the world's religion with the most adherents on the planet. It is a religion. Every single scholar who studies philosophy of world religions, as I taught for years, this is a religion. Here's a good typical definition. Stephanie said that Shakespeare, I think Lewis's essay Shakespeare, I think you can find the essay God in the Dock, but I need to do a Google search and remember where the Shakespeare is. I think God in the Dock is the name of an essay, but it's also a collection of essays. God in the Dock, D-O-C-K. Dock is what the British call the place where the defendant stands in court. They call that the dock. God in the Dock, Lewis's point is that we would say the stand, maybe, yeah, the defendant, but Lewis's point is that it used to be we were always in the dock, God was the judge, and now we reversed it. For the modern man, God is in the dock and we're the judge. But there's a collection of essays with that name. I think it's in there, but I can find it. It might be in The World's Last Night and Other Poems. The World's Last Night and Other Poems. It might be in that one. Religion is a set of beliefs concerning the cause, nature, and purpose of the universe, especially when considered as the creation of a superhuman agency or agencies, usually involving devotional ritual observances, and often containing a moral code governing the conduct of human affairs. Christianity is a religion. Islam's a religion. Judaism's a religion. What happens today, and I get it, I'm a Christian and a pastor to boot. Religion ends up being, for a lot of people, synonymous with a bunch of rules to follow. If that's what you think religion means, then I go, oh, okay, well, yeah, Christianity is not religion. It's not just a bunch of rules to follow. That's true. So it's not that we can ever say the term. If you really know what the word religion means, yes, it is. It's very much a religion, the word religion. In fact, that word is actually used in the Bible. But anyway, my point at this point I want to make is this. It's a very important point. For centuries, around the globe, religious claims were always considered a form of knowledge. Knowing something about reality. Forever. I mean, it was for centuries. That is, facts based on actual reality. Thus, religions were either true or what? False. Either you're reincarnated or you're not. Either Jesus is the Messiah or he is not. He was raised from the dead or he was not. Either he showed to Moses or he didn't. Exodus, on and on it goes. Either Muhammad really is God's prophet or he's not. Down the list. For centuries, there was a different religion, not just those three. But most people today have absolutely changed the whole understanding of it. Today, religion represents a personal, psychological preference, just like your preference for chocolate or vanilla ice cream. It's no different from a subjective preference. Religious claims today and modern Western worldview, for the Western, maybe not so much in Africa and Asia and so forth, but the Western world, Europe and North America, and Canada and so forth, religious claims are not a form of knowledge about reality. They are insight into your personal preferences. That needs to sink in. You need to understand that. It's safe to presume whenever you're talking about religion to another person, at Walmart, wherever, it's safe to assume that when you talk about religion, they will not think you have changed the subject they will not think you're on the same subject of reality. How is this on sale? Did Jesus rise from the dead? Same subject matter. No, they think you have just radically changed categories to talk about preference. Is this on sale? Do you like spinach? Is this on sale? What's your favorite color? It's a category shift. And you can always assume that's what people think. That's why people get so angry when you claim that your religion is true and someone else's is false. You're stupid, closed-minded, and bigoted. Why would you make your personal preference someone else's personal preference? That's just like saying, I love chocolate and you need to too. What kind of dummy does that? What kind of closed-minded bigot? Take that view, add to it, all those chocolate lovers cause all the wars that have ever happened. That's their view of you. That needs to sink in. It needs to sink in. Like the haters on Facebook like snow. They hate you and Christmas. They do.
It does turn like a hate. Yeah, it does turn like a you're wrong.
You're wrong to say you like it. Well, the better analogy would be is if you said you love snow and everyone else should love snow too, and they're wrong if they don't love snow. Then they would go, who do you think you are? You're just saying I like snow, and that makes people very angry. Not everyone, but anyway, that's much like saying my favorite steak play. Wow, I love Texas Roadhouse. Great, I love Texas Roadhouse. Woo, amen. Thank you, Jesus. Texas Roadhouse, and you need to love it too because it's the best restaurant there is. Now think about that for a second. Then all the Texas Roadhouse lovers get together. They form a group. We'll call it Texas Roadhouse Club, and they make up songs about how good Texas Roadhouse is and how it's the best. They talk about it. They give lessons. They study the ingredients. They go out. Then they form groups to go around and knock on doors and tell everybody else how they need to love Texas Roadhouse. And if they don't like any other restaurant, they're clearly wrong. What would you say about such people? They collect money and train people. They send them to Texas Roadhouse University to learn the depths. What would you think of them? You think kind of stupid. Why would you be stupid? Who were you? Why would you think? Why would you ever think your preference for that restaurant? Why would you do that? It's just stupid. That's what atheists think of you and me. It's just stupid. Why would you do that? It works for you. Good. It works for you. Brad Pitt said that one time. You know Brad Pitt, my twin. Laughing. He said in an article. Of course, I'm kidding. He said in an article that he tried it. Why? Because it worked for him. Perfect with a bow on it. Yes, that's the view. That's the average standard view of everybody who has any religion. It's a personal preference, and you are just so crazy and bigoted to force it on someone else's throat. It's a buffet, dude. There's tons of restaurants. Stop acting like your restaurant's the only one. There's tons of them. I remember that show called Community. It came out years ago as a comedy, pretty funny. There was a Christmas special. And they were all little claymations. And one guy they were going on, the Christmas is this, Christmas, Santa Claus, or whatever. One guy, I think it was a guy or gal, said, no, Christmas is actually about the birth of Jesus and da-da-da. And the other ones, the little claymations, flip back and they like disappear. Basically killed it. Killed the claymation. And they said, silly, dumb, whatever, Christmas is not for you. It's for everybody. Think about that. Hey, December 28th, that's my birthday. Kill him! December 20th is not for David's birthday is not for David. It's for all people to decide for themselves what to do on his birthday because it's just a preference. You need to understand that. So that's what their view is towards you. And again, if you add to that the accompanying view which they have, religions cause violence, it calls the wars, it calls the battles. Not only are you just stupid and bigot and force your preference on someone's throat, you're violent about it. And then you go pedophile, the Catholic priest. That's the very focused view on that. And that's what's beating every millisecond right now on YouTube around the globe and Facebook. Atheists sure do, but in general non-theist people, a general secular person, secular from the Latin word secularum means of the age. It's a general secular, pagan, non-Jewish. Yeah. In general view that religious people, particularly atheists, but yeah, it is the view. No, not everyone has that view, but in general they do. It's a safe assumption. And so I've had conversations with people that talk about religion. Sometimes I'll throw that out there and say, by the way, well, maybe I'll tell you later, but that's the kind of stuff I'll say now. I'll head them off at the pass. I usually don't say it's a religion, which I might. I'll say I'm a Christian. Well, and Christian, so that means that there's all power, creator, God of the universe, who revealed himself in Jesus and the triune God and so forth. Why would you believe that? Well, I've got several reasons I can articulate to you. Well, why do you believe it? Well, because it's true. I like to believe things that are true. What do you mean it's true? Because it happened. It's a reality. So I kind of get off the pass and say, because it happened, or it did happen. If it didn't happen, then I wouldn't be a Christian. I'm convinced things really did happen in the space-time continuum. There really was a man named Jesus. He really was raised from the dead. He really did. That's it. Any question or comments about any of this so far? We're going to move on to something else. We're changing gears a little bit. More definitions, but I'm going to slow down this next part. Any question or comments about that? My last probing question on this for you is, do you understand that religion is not a preference? It is a claim about reality. It's based in knowledge. Do you understand that really? If you are a disciple of Jesus, do you understand that the claim you have made is not that you like to believe in it, not that you want to believe in it, not that the belief makes you happy, not that the belief is useful, but that you're actually thinking something about reality. It's knowledge. That is either true or false. It is a form of knowledge. It is not a form of preference. Shaking my head. It is not in the same category. If for you it is a preference, oh Lord, please, I hope you'll stick around the study. I hope I'll win you over and persuade you to move from, I like it, feels warm and cozy, to, I believe it's true. I hope so. And maybe I'll fail, but I will try. Because it's a big deal. Okay. How many on time? Oh, man. Okay. We'll do our best thing on this. Okay. All right. Good. Okay. Naturalism and scientism. Let me talk about this because you're going to come across this if you talk to atheists. Okay. Naturalism, this is really called metaphysical naturalism. Sometimes it's called materialism. This is a philosophical worldview. It is a worldview. That is, again, a cognitive look at the whole reality. It's a cognitive, how I look and understand the whole world and how it works. It's a worldview. This is what it's made of. Nature encompasses all that exists throughout space and time. That's what a naturalism in nature, or material. That natural nature encompasses everything that exists in space and time. Nature, or the universe, or the cosmos, consists only of natural elements. That is, spatio-temporal physical substance, mass and energy. So everything that exists is composed of mass and energy. Everything that exists. Nothing else exists. So non-physical or quasi-physical substances like information, ideas, values, logic, mathematics, intellect, emergent phenomenon, they might supervene on that, but it all goes down to a physical account. Everything goes down to. Now, materialists have two different forms. I'm going to go on pretty quickly, and if you have questions, I can, just trying to expose you to it if you've never been exposed. They're a reductive materialist and non-reductive. A reductive materialist says you reduce non-material things to material things. For example, you reduce mental events to physical events in the brain. A reductive materialist thinks there are no such things as ideas. Those are molecules moving around the brain. You don't have thoughts about things. That's just molecules in the brain. We'll talk a lot more about that in a few weeks, but that's a reductive materialist. Everything that exists is either composed of matter and energy, mass and energy. Of course, those are interchangeable. Thank you, Einstein. Equals mc squared. So those are interchangeable. A non-reductive materialist says you still believe that everything is matter, but you'll not reduce it mental to physical. A mental event, for example, is then not just a brain state, but the brain state plus some external property like its origin in it. Now, I don't know what that means, how that works, but you'll have people, well, I'm a materialist, but I do think we have thoughts. And I think they're just being inconsistent. I'd say go all in, brother. If you're a materialist, you can have both ways. And I've asked a materialist, I was having lunch with him, and he thought that. He thought the soul was, I'll talk about that later, a soul is part of the brain. I said, where is it? What does it look like? Well, I don't know. Well, it's not really in the brain, but it is. But it isn't. But it uses the brain, but it's all material. And he had a hard time. In all fairness, this guy's not a world-class philosopher, but he's a real-world materialist. I mean, I have conversations about this stuff, and they'll say, so he technically, if he didn't know this, I would say, oh, you're a non-reductive materialist. And he might have said, excuse me? That wasn't a cuss word. It would mean, you're a materialist, it's all made of matter and energy, everything, but there might be this other special icing of a thing, but it's still based on the material. It's still based on the material. Okay. So nature is everything that exists, all this space and time. It's all made of natural elements. 3, nature operates by the laws of physics, which means in principle, you can explain everything eventually, everything by law of physics. While you're sitting down, while you're writing on that paper, the words that come out of your mouth, there's a physical formula that will tell me why you're doing what you're doing. Because there is no you. There is no self. There is no consciousness. There's just molecules in motion, and it's all governed by physics.
So would that mean there's no morality?
They would say there's no morality. That's exactly right. They would say there's no morality. That's exactly right. That's right.
Who would talk like that?
A lot of atheists. It's not necessarily the case, but most atheists are naturalists. Most atheists are naturalists. That's a worldview. I get frustrated when Christians say atheism is a worldview. No, it is not. Atheism is not a worldview. Atheism is supposed to be the belief proposition no God exists. Nowadays it's, I don't believe God exists. That's still not a worldview. That's a belief or a lack of belief. Great. It's not a worldview. Christians say, it is too. You believe it, don't you? I'm like, oh, this sounds so silly. Materialism, naturalism, that's a worldview. So that's why they usually go together. All that exists in reality is made of matter, energy, and so forth.
Because it can't be God.
It can be God, but that's the last of A, B, C, D. A D is, therefore, supernatural doesn't exist. You can't have a soul, you can't have God, you can't have angels, none of that stuff. Because they're not made of matter and energy. That's right. So it's a metaphysical philosophy. Carl Sagan, who was real well known back in the 70s, 80s, had a show on for a long time called The Cosmos. He was a good champion for atheist nerds a long time ago. Carl Sagan said it all the time at the beginning of the show. He said this, the cosmos is all that is, or ever was, or ever will be. That's materialism. That's the perfect succinct
That
statement.
guy that is always on TV and says that.
Oh, he's dead. He's been dead for a long
No,
time.
no, no. Isn't there another guy? Well, I'm thinking of the black guy that.
That's Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Would he be considered a naturalist?
Yes. As far as I know, he is, yeah. Neil deGrasse Tyson.
And also an atheist.
Yeah, he's an atheist. Yeah. And Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he's an atheist in the term, not in the proper sense, but in the new sense. He'll say, well, I don't believe it, there's not enough evidence. And I've asked him, why not? And he brings up the standard stuff, which is suffering and whatever. But, those are not good reasons. But the chief problem with materialism is it's self-contradictory. And that's a bad problem to be. You can't be that's a bad one. The statement, the only things which exist are made of matter and energy, means that the truth proposition in that statement doesn't exist. I'll say that one more time. The only thing which exists are made of matter and energy. That means the truth proposition in that statement doesn't exist. It means that statement's not true, because that statement doesn't exist. That's contradictory immediately. It's nonsense. That doesn't bother people, but it bothers me. That's nonsense. If the only thing which exists is matter and energy, it means the sentence I spoke, the content, it's called the truth content of that proposition, it doesn't exist either, because that truth isn't made of mass. Statements aren't made of mass or energy. Doesn't make any sense. So this is naturalism. This is all of reality is this fishbowl. And the naturalist chatting with the theist, and he says, "What's up, man? Hey, what do you think of reality?" And I go, I think we're in a thing in a bowl. It's outside. I think there's other kinds of creatures out there, and so forth. Really, why do you say it? Well, let me ask you this question, actually. Every once in a while, food pops into the bowl. Where do you think that food comes from? I tell you, I think it comes from these other creatures dropping off. No. There are no creatures. There's just the bowl. where's the food come from? Well, it comes from processes in the water that produce it. But what do you think comes from? You mean it's produced by itself inside? Yeah, absolutely, natural. Absolutely, sure. Because we know nothing else exists, so it has to come from within. Well, can you explain to me where it comes from? No, not yet, but we will. Well, you will. Why are you so confident that we will? Because we know that's all exists, and it has to come from within. Well, how do you know that all that exists is reality? How do you know? Because we all know that. Well, what about the food? No, that comes from within. Well, how do you know that? Because we know this all exists. You hear the circular nature? That's how it works. That is how it works. That's the naturalist. All that exists is reality. There's no way you can be I don't see any way you can be an intellectually honest naturalist. How could you possibly know that all that exists is nature? Not to mention it's self-contradictory. How would you even know that? You'd have to be omniscient, like being an atheist. I don't understand they could do that. But it's absolutely imperative to understand that this is a worldview. So it's not science versus religion. It's one worldview versus another worldview. Christian theism's rival is naturalism, not science. Theism offers an explanation of where naturalism offers none. I know where the food comes from. I know where there's a bowl. Well, how do you know that? Just your preference. No, it's not a preference. It's not every once in a while this bean comes in and drops his finger in. That finger is not like anything else, and they leave. Where's that being right now? I don't know. Actually, it's all around us. You see that analogy here. That's how the argument goes, back and forth. If naturalism turns out to be more likely than theism, it'll be because theism unwisely tried to explain the unexplainable, not because naturalism offered a better or indeed any explanation of the ultimate laws of nature, and certainly not because of science. What's science? And then I'll talk about scientism in a second. God cannot be part of any kind of thing inside. Remember Christian theism, God is not inside the bowl. By definition, he's not. That's what theism, an all-power creator God that created it all. I think of a potter who makes a pot and clay, and he's made of clay. Well, the potter's not clay. The potter might get clay on him. Well, okay, sure. Might put his hand in the pot. He's going to become clay. It's the same way. God can't be part of a scientific theory because God's not a physical thing. The same thing is true of naturalism. It's not a scientific theory either. There's no equations for naturalism. We're going to have to use our intuition. Well, I'm just going to have a second. Okay, so any question? That's what's going on. That's what naturalism is. All reality. Most atheists, most people I have met in life outside of church, most people in my experience who are a little more educated, usually a lot of times, most average person in my experience is like, I don't know, I'm open-minded, I don't know, religion, blah, blah, my grandma went to church, that kind of stuff. But if they've been on YouTube and read some books, they're naturalists. And they think religion is a preference, and this is their view. Now, scientism is something different. But I have any questions about naturalism? Any questions or comments about that? So all that exists is matter and energy. Yeah? Yes, ma'am. What's your name? Julia? Where did the idea of naturalism come from? Good question. I don't know where the term was first coined, but the idea probably came from the early 16th, 15th century when there's a big movement, and certainly the 17th, called humanism. And that was a shift from, for a long time, knowledge or universities and school were hosted and governed by the church. And the word they used for that was scholarship. And it was where the church and learning joined together in Europe. And then the humanism movement detached the two. They said, can we still have knowledge and learn things, whatever, and remove God? For centuries, theology, study of God, was called the queen of the sciences. The idea is it was the overarching, it was like the whole fishbowl around it. And there was a bit of movement that said, what if we kick God out? Can we still come to conclusions with no notion of the church or God? And that's what humanism. So I have a suspicion that's the order. Eventually what happened is that became the dominant view in Europe. And then you became a naturalist if that was the case. Yes, ma'am. Anything else? How are we doing on time? Almost. Can I finish this last one? Yeah, I think we'll finish it. We'll finish it up. Okay. Scientism. This is also called logical positivism. Do I put that in your handout? Good, yeah. Okay, sometimes it's called logical positivism. This is a methodological assumption. Okay, science, or the scientific method, is a methodology. How I come to arrive at some knowledge. How I come to do it. There are people who believe that only one type of evidence which gives us truth, and that is which is discovered by the scientific method. The scientific method doesn't lead us to that truth. It does not exist. What people typically are people who believe that. Naturalists. If all that exists is matter and energy, the scientific method works with matter and energy. So the scientific method is the arbiter of all that exists. It's the arbiter of reality. It's the arbiter of truth. The people who believe that, it used to be called logical positivism. And that was back in the 20s, actually, 1920s and 30s. It's been abandoned for about 100 years. But uneducated scientists still advocate this. Like the Peter Atkins, the chemist at Oxford, he's retired now. He's absolutely a logical positivist. The street name for this, like crack, what's the street? I don't know the street name. It's a funny thing. The street name. Thank you, Hunter. The street name for a crack weed. I never thought about the street name. Logical positivism is what's really called. On the street, it's called scientism. Scientism. The belief that all truth is governed or come at the end of the conclusion of scientific method. All of it is. All of it is. So, all of it. If science doesn't tell it, it doesn't exist. Others will say it doesn't even matter. It's a dumb question. Neil deGrasse Tyson, the black scientist who talked about that, who's great, smart guy, seems like a real nice guy, whatever, he says that. I mean, in science, if you ask a question like, does God exist, or what's the purpose of life, they'll say it's just nonsense. It's a nonsense question. And that's what logical positivism said. It said that the scientific method didn't come to conclusion. It was a nonsense question. It's like going jibbity-jabba-da-joo. It made no sense. Because if science can't prove it or demonstrate it, that's the case. Now, the problem is, you can't possibly prove that all that exists is made of matter and energy. You must assume it. Then you got to stay very, very, very faithful to it. Then no matter how much Christians say, but how do you explain X? It doesn't really matter. If they're committed to naturalism, they're going to say, whatever causes it, it's something composed of matter and energy. If they believe in scientism, then they're just going to say, well, I'm fine with not knowing, because science will eventually figure it out. So if you give God as the causal explanation, you're just lazy and stupid, because you've given up looking for material causes, and because you've abandoned the scientific method, which means you're just an imbecile. Because all the smart people know, the arbiters of truth and reality are scientists. Every single person used as a specialist on the news, on TV shows, are scientists and doctors. The doctors say, specialists say, every time the news said something, I know, Trump said so-and-so, but experts say, and they quote a doctor, they quote a scientist. They are the arbiters of all that is true and real. That's it. It's the number one claim today in all. It's science, stupid. It's just science. It's a deal breaker. Every opinion you have is as imbecilic as a 2-year-old talking about the way quantum physics. It doesn't make any sense. Because why? Because scientists have told us. That's a new modern phenomenon. It's a modern phenomenon. And that's scientism at its core. Most Americans absolutely believe in scientism. They didn't know they believed in it, but they do. A lot of Christians think that too. And that's unfortunate because it's false. Now, let me say something real quick about this. Real quick. There's different kinds of causes when we talk about scientism. Think about this for a second, and we're done wrapping up tonight. There's event causation and an agent causation. Did I say that? I did. Okay, good. Event causation and agent causation. Science tells us how does it work, which means it only seeks for whatever event or state of affairs that cause that effect. That's it. Whatever event or state of affairs that cause that effect. It must not ask anything else, which is why they tend to think that other questions are stupid. That's it. They're looking for event causation. It's like billiard balls, pull balls on a pool table. They hit that ball. What caused that ball to move that ball? Why did that ball move that ball? Does it go back forever? No. What happened? Well, it just done. You can't say human hit the first ball because they're looking only for event causes. Cause and effect, cause and effect. That's just the event cause. Then there's agent causation. That's a different kind of thing. An agent, that's like a human person or any kind of person, angelic, whatever. A persisting object possessing various properties, certain causal powers. Agent causation typically answers the question of origin or why. Why did it begin? Why did it begin? Where did the bowl come from? Why did the food come here? What caused the food to appear on top of the water? Why? So most agent causation is answering that question. I like how the author of Hebrews 3:4 says it this way. For every house is built by someone, but the builder of all things is God. So it builds in, he's tapping into that intuitive sense of I walk by a house and I go, man, look at that house. That's so pretty. I want to design that house. You go, that's a stupid question. It's a stupid question. Why would you even ask such a dumb question? Because look, it's pretty. What you think that formed naturally? Of course it did. What laws of physics govern that house you were born? Well, I don't know yet, but we'll figure that out. Right? That's a difference. So an agent called, hey, we come in the counter, my favorite now, we come in the kitchen counter, there's this red disc-like shaped thing that smells like pumpkin. I call it a pumpkin pie. Where'd that come from? What do you mean where'd it come from? That thing on the counter, where'd that come from? I bet I can eat it. I'm going to call it a pumpkin pie. What do you mean where it came from? That's a dumb question. No, it's not a dumb question. You think that pie appeared out of nowhere? Sure. Well, I don't know yet where it came from. Well, let me ask you this question. So this pie maker of yours, who made that pie maker? I got that later on. Are you telling me if I don't know who the parents are of the pie maker, there wasn't a pie maker? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in life. If I went to Mars, on the side of a rock, it scratched little things in order, and no wind in it, no erosion, no water, and it had this language, everybody instantaneously, that's a language. It's a language. It shouldn't be formed here. Who brought it here? That's an agent question. Who? How did it get to this point? It's very different from I look at the Grand Canyon and say, well, that's event causation. Now, physicians make this distinction all the time. Listen to this. She died of natural causes. You get all the time in the court, right? She died of natural causes. What was the cause of death? Natural causes. That means no agent caused the event, but other material or physical events caused it. All right? My truck has automated systems built my truck. Most of it. I mean, it was in a factory and these robot arms, fine, someone to walk around. Most of it is about engine. I could examine every part of it and explain how it works, but it would never tell me where the design came from, why the factory was built, etc. I can't, but imagine I could. Break down every part of Henry Ford's Model T engine. All on the table. Put it back together. I can explain exactly how it worked. It would never answer the question, where did the engine come from? It would never answer the question, why were the parts put in that way? It's a different kind of question. Hey, I hear a whoop on the stove. What is that? Oh, that's hot tea. Why is it for hot tea? Oh, the hot tea. Why is it burning? Why is it cooking on the stove? Because what happens is when heat energy rises at the bottom, it hits that metal, it goes to the top and changes the molecules of water, da-da-da-da-da. That's one explanation. That's event causation. Or I can say because the only one's hot tea. They both answer the question. One's event causation, one's agent causation. Okay. Someone who believes in scientism completely disregards agent causation. That's a dumb thing to even think about. Dumb thing. Everything that occurs has natural causes or event causation. You could trace back a murder completely through physical processes, all governed by the laws of nature, which means, of course, that's determinism. There's no moral choice. They right none. Why did that person die? Why did he get shot? Oh, because Joey pulled the trigger. Why did Joey pull the trigger? Because she had various impulses and desires in her put inside of her over millions of years of evolution. Where did that happen? Because years ago, when the Earth was formed, what happened? All the way back to the universe when it first started. I could write physical form equations to go all the way to the point that would have guaranteed that would have happened. But at no point can I say Julia pulled the trigger because she wanted to. because there's agent causation. That doesn't exist in scientism. Why? Because your will, if such a thing could never exist, because a will would not be made of matter and energy. There's no such thing as that. Does that make sense, what we're saying, sir? Event causation, agent causation? The chief problem with scientism, logical positive, is that, of course, it is self-contradictory. The statement, the only truth which exists is demonstrated by science, can't be demonstrated scientifically. All that exists is by science. Where did you learn that? Where's the laboratory equipment that gets you to that conclusion? How much does that statement weigh? What's the molecules of that belief statement? Doesn't make any sense. It's a philosophical view. Wait a second, there's no such thing as philosophy. All exists with matter and energy. It's self-contradictory. Does that make sense to you? That's self-contradictory. All that exists is matter and energy. That statement's not made of matter and energy. So therefore, that is called gibberish. That's what it's called. Okay, as I wrap up, there are certain facts of the universe, of the reality, that science couldn't possibly explain because of the nature of the thing being explained. Look, I love science. I love it. I wanted to be a scientist all my life. I wanted to be an astronaut before I was called to ministry. I thought that's what I was going to do. I love it. There's a certain person here who hates space. I won't tell them who you are, Johnny. I don't understand that, but I love space. I love learning. I love exploring. I love science. I'm not a science hater. My goodness, I still get excited about it. I read articles about science. I love it. I'm not anti-science at all. I'm against scientism. Scientism is gibberish. Doesn't make any sense. There are numerous facts about reality that are not composed of matter and energy. But they're facts. They're facts, but they're not composed of matter and energy. Like every single historical event that's ever occurred. Think about that. If I go back to history and write a history book. Philosophical truths, political truths, culinary arts. Thank you, Stephanie. Artwork. Now I'll talk about this. DNA, on and on. There's all kinds of things that they're not made of matter and energy, but they're facts of reality. They can't be proven in a laboratory. No science can help us. It's like asking, what's the mathematical formula for why I love sunsets? No matter how many times you try, there's no mathematical explanation for that. It's outside of what science can explain. And then this is an MIT, it's a real short clip by Ian Hutchinson, Dr. Ian. He's a nuclear physicist at MIT. He says something real simple.
Well, scientism is a word that's used to describe the view very simply that science is all the real knowledge there is. That's slightly an overstatement, but that's the simplest definition. In other words, it's the idea that if you want to find out anything in this world, you should use the methods of the natural sciences. And I think this is very important to the question of the relationship between science and Christianity and spirituality generally, because I think scientism is what leads some people to think that religion is a waste of time because they think it can't possibly be knowledge because it's not science. But scientism itself is a dreadful mistake. It's just simply an intellectual error. It's not the case that a discipline like history, for example, uses the methods of the natural sciences. It simply doesn't, because it's dealing with unreproducible phenomena. Most of the interesting things in history are not reproducible. You can't do experiments to prove them, and that's what science depends upon. And also, history deals with things which have enormous nuances, and they have a large amount of ambiguity, whereas the natural sciences work on insisting on a certain clarity of expression that is given to us by measurement and mathematization and important other disciplines that give crystal clarity. And so it isn't the case that even as something as simple and widespread as the study of history verifies that scientism makes sense. So actually there are lots of other disciplines, the humanities and social studies, that don't use the methods of science. And so I'm very comfortable taking the view that science doesn't prove there is a God, that actually we don't use the methods of science, for example, in theology and in thinking about God and understanding God. And because science isn't all the knowledge there is, and so there can be real spirit.
Well, that's the point. You're going to assume, if I were in work, we're done, I would assume when you talk to people out in the real world, normal people, especially if they've read a little bit, they're going to be, if they're atheistic, they're naturalists. They believe all that really exists is matter and energy, and they have some form of scientism. What I found is 99% of the time they cannot articulate anything I just said. They don't know what these things are. They don't know. They've not read well enough. They don't know the vocabulary words. That's fine. I'm not there to make fun of them, but I will assume I will listen to things they say and go, "Oh, you're that kind of person." I'm informing of these intro things tonight to say we have conversations. These are real views held by millions and millions and millions of people out there in the world, and that's will help you as you inform what, of course, what you believe, but also how to listen well and critically, so you're not totally shocked when someone says what they say.